I brought my feverish son to work, but the new secretary called him a wild brat and even handed me a suspension letter. Little do they know, I've been secretly married for 5 years. I am actually the chairman's daughter-in-law. For 5 long years, I've endured workplace bullying and a cheating husband. Today, I'm done holding back. I'm going to settle the score with the scumbag, his mistress, and every single one of these snobs. In my arms, little Shannon whimpers softly. His tiny face is burning red, looking like a ripe apple. Mommy, water. His voice is so dry and hoarse. I quickly grab the cup of warm water from the desk and carefully bring it to his lips. Suddenly, the office door is kicked open, and a gust of freezing cold air rushes in.
Lizzie founds at the door,
clutching a piece of paper in his hand.
His eyebrows knitted into a tight, angry scowl. He's my mother-in-law's, well, the newly hired secretary of Shenjiolan, the head of our compound service station. Word has it, he is a distant nephew from her side of the family. Lin Shi, the phone has been ringing for ages. Are you deaf? His voice isn't particularly loud, but it's incredibly sharp, piercing like a needle. The other colleagues in the office all turn their eyes toward us. I completely ignore him. Can keep feeding water to Shannon. My child is sick. Even if the president himself showed up, he'd have to wait. Li's face darkens instantly. He stomps over to my desk, his leather shoes clicking loudly. Hey, I'm talking to you. He slams that piece of paper onto my desk with a loud smack. The water cup on the desk wobbles from the impact. Startled, Shen-an shivers in fear and cowers deeper into my arms. At that moment, a wave of pure rage surges inside me. Keep your voice down, I say, keeping my tone low but sharp. Keep my voice down, Li sneers, as if he's just heard the funniest joke in the world. He points a finger at Shannon in my arms. You actually think you're in the right for bringing a kid to the office? He's running a high fever, and there's no one at home.
No one at home? That's your problem, not the office's problem.
Li Ji crosses his arms over his chest, jolting his chin up high in a smug, condescending sneer. This is a service station, a place where we serve hundreds of households in this compound.
Not a daycare, Lindsay. You better get a clear grasp of your status here. I set my glass down
and looked up at him. And what exactly is my status? Like you don't already know? Do I really need to spell it out? He sneered. His eyes swept over Shannon with pure contempt. An unmarried woman dragging a kid around.
You're only here because Director Shen was kind enough to let you stay.
And now? You have the nerve to bring your bastard child here? The words bastard child felt like a red-hot iron, branding itself deep into my heart. The entire office fell dead silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared right at us. I felt all the blood in my body rush straight to my head. My ears were ringing. 5 years of holding back. 5 years of taking their abuse just to get by. Completely shattered at this very moment.
Right in front of everyone, I laughed.
I leaned down and kissed my son's forehead. Don't be scared, Anan. Then, I stood up and sculpted Shen-an into my arms. He was so good, wrapping his tiny arms tightly around my neck. I walked around the desk and stepped directly toward Li Jia. One slow step at a time.
Caught off guard by my intensity, he looked panicked.
He took a step back, stammering, "What do you think you're doing?" I didn't even look at him. I brushed right past him, heading straight for the largest office at the end of the hallway. My mother-in-law, Shen Chulen's office. Behind me, Li Jia shrieked in absolute panic. "Leech, you get back here, right now. Have you completely lost your mind?" I didn't stop. Holding my burning hot son in my arms, I walked fast, my steps steady. The sharp click of my heels echoed off the Tenazo floor, sharp and unwavering. Every single step felt like I was trampling over the cowardly, weak version of myself from the past 5 years. When I reached the heavy Makani door, it was tightly shut. I could hear my mother-in-law, Shen Chiolan, having a meeting inside with several department heads. I didn't bother knocking. I raised my leg and threw all my weight into a massive kick right at the lock. Bam! A deafening crash. The door flew open under the force of my boot. The heavy wood slammed against the wall and bounced back. Inside the office, every single person around the conference table jumped to their feet, absolutely terrified. Sentulan sits at the head of the table. Her face is a mask of annoyance and shock at being interrupted. She is wearing a dark, professional skirt suit. Her hair is pinned up immaculately, without a single strand out of place. Her eyes are sharp and piercing. But when she realizes it's me standing at the door, holding a child in my arms, that annoyance instantly turns into a look of sanctimonious authority. "Have you lost your mind?" Her voice is like falling icicles, sharp and biting. The other executives exchange nervous glances, none of them daring to make a sound. Lisei comes scrambling in right behind me, his face going dead white the second he sees what's happening. "Director Shen, I'm so sorry. I couldn't stop her." I completely ignore them, clutching Shannon close. I take step after step into this office, a room I used to only enter when delivering documents. I walk right up to the massive mahogany desk. It's covered in files, trophies, and a nameplate that reads, General Director. I lean over and gently place the burning hot Shannon right on top of those files. The child is probably terrified by the tense atmosphere in the room, or maybe the fever is just too painful. As his lip trembles, on the verge of tears. I lean down closer and whisper in his ear, "Anon, don't cry."
Let Grandma have a look at you.
Then I stand up straight and look directly at the livid woman sitting at the head of the table. "My mother-in-law, Shen Tula." I point to the flushed child on the desk and say, loud and clear, word by word, "Director Shen, your grandson is sick." Instantly, the entire office falls dead silent. It is so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's expressions freeze on their faces, like a bizarre oil painting. The managers' mouths hang open so wide, you could stuff an egg inside. Their eyes dart back and forth, stagnant between me, Shen Chulan, and the child.
Completely filled with disbelief.
Li Zi's expression is the best of all. His face goes from pale white to a flushed red, and then from red to a sickly green, like a spilled paint palette. His lips tremble helplessly. He pointed at me, then at the child, completely speechless. Shen Tulan's face suddenly turned pale. He glared at me, his eyes locked onto mine. There was shock in his eyes, and fury. But most of all, a terrifying sense of losing control as his rules were shattered. What did you say?" His voice was trembling.
I met his gaze.
Without flinching even a single bit. For 5 long years, this was the very first time I looked him straight in the eye, with absolutely no fear. I said, "Your grandson, Shen An, has a burning fever of 39 degrees. I raised my voice even louder, making sure every single person in the room heard me loud and clear. "That precious son you raised, Shenza, hasn't come home in a month. He won't answer my calls. He won't reply to my texts. He has completely vanished into thin air. I can't find him anywhere. And now, our child is so sick his brain is about to fry from the fever. But your beloved nephew had the nerve to call my son a bastard and tried to kick us, a mother and her child, out onto the streets." I whipped my hand around, pointing directly at Li Jie, who was trembling and barely standing by the door.
I'm done cleaning up this mess.
"You, Chen Chuyin, you clean it up yourself." I practically screamed those last few words. 5 years of built-up resentment, pain, and fury all exploded out of me at that very moment. Once it was out, I felt completely drained, like every drop of energy had been sucked from my body, but I forced myself to stand perfectly straight.
I stared at Chen Chulan's face.
Watching it shift from sheer rage to suspicion, and finally to utter disbelief. Finally, his eyes drifted down to the table, landing on the tiny, fragile body, whimpering in pain. A little face that looked almost identical to his son Shenzi's when he was a boy. And those big, watery eyes, glassy from the fever. All of his defenses, all of his anger, collapsed in an instant. He bolted upright from his chair, moving with a speed that defied his age. He rushed around the table, lunging toward us in just a few strides. He reached out, trying to touch Zhenan's forehead, but his hand trembled violently in midair.
As his hand finally came down, and on, he choked out, his voice cracking with an emotion he didn't even realize he had.
He finally pressed his hand against his grandson's forehead. The scorching heat sent a jolt through him, making him recoil as if he'd been electrocuted. How can he be this hot? At that moment, all of his dignity, all of his pride, completely vanished. He snatched the child from the pile of documents, pulling him tightly into his arms.
Call an ambulance, now!
"No, forget that. La Zhang, get the car. We're going to the central hospital." He roared at a supervisor who was frozen in fear.
Then, clutching the child, he dashed out like a hurricane, storming right past me.
As he passed Li Jie at the doorway, he didn't even spare him a single glance.
He just spat out a few icy words through clenched teeth. "Get the hell out of my sight!"
Shen Tulan rushed out of the office with Shen An in his arms. His hurried footsteps and sharp commands echoed down the corridor. "Yao Wang, go grab my coat. La Zhang, where's the car? Hurry up!" Inside the office, the remaining supervisors and Li Jie stood frozen in shock. The supervisor named Lao Jiang snapped out of his daze, fumbling to pull out his phone as he scrambled out, dialing frantically. "Hello? Is this the driver dispatch desk? The director needs the car right now. We are going to the central hospital immediately.
It is a matter of life and death."
Another female supervisor, surnamed Wang, also bolted out of the room, presumably to fetch his coat. In the blink of an eye, only I and a deathly pale Li Jie were left in the office. He stared at me, his eyes filled with absolute terror and despair. You. He stammered for what felt like forever, unable to squeeze out a single coherent sentence. I was in no mood to deal with him. I walked over to the desk, picked up my old canvas bag, and dug out my son's health insurance card and medical records. Then, slinging the bag over my shoulder, I turned around and got ready to leave. I had to get to the hospital. Suddenly, Li Jielung glored forward and grabbed my arm tightly. "No, please, sister-in-law, I was wrong. I messed up." His grip was incredibly tight, digging into my skin so hard it hurt. "I didn't know. I swear I really didn't know." With a loud thud, he actually dropped straight to his knees. A 6-foot-tall grown man was kneeling on the floor just like that, clutching my shins. "Sister-in-law,
Please, you have to talk to the director for me.
I didn't mean to do it. I swear. I'm new here. I just wanted to make a good impression.
I'm just a brainless idiot.
Please,
Show some mercy and forgive me. Please, don't lower yourself to my level.
He started to bawl,
Tears and snot streaming down his face, smearing all over my pants.
As I looked at him like this, my heart didn't waver one bit. I felt nothing but sheer disgust.
The way he had acted all high and mighty,
So arrogant and domineering just moments ago, was still fresh in my mind.
and now he was reduced to this pathetic puddle of mush.
I tried to wrench my leg free, but he clung onto it even tighter. Sister-in-law, you have to save me! The boss! He'll beat me to death! I'm my parents' only son.
I was utterly sick of this.
Let go, my voice was ice cold. No, I won't. If you don't forgive me, I'll never let go, he whimpered, throwing a shameless fit.
Grating my teeth, I hoisted the canvas bag in my hand. Inside was a power bank, a water bottle, and a heavy ring of keys.
Without a second thought, I slammed it hard against his head. With a dull thud, he probably never expected me to actually hit him. The blow dazed him completely,
and her grip loosened.
I seized the chance, yanked my leg back, and took 2 steps away.
Clutching his head,
He stared at me in utter disbelief. You hit me? Hitting you is the least. I glared at him, spitting out each word. You can insult me all you want,
but you do not insult my son.
begging Shen Chulan for mercy won't save you today. The one you should be begging is my son.
Once he recovers,
You will kneel before him and say you're sorry 100 times. If he nods, we'll let this go.
but if he doesn't,
You can just wait for Shenzi to come deal with you.
at the mention of the name Shenzhe, Lizzie began to tremble even more violently. He knew better than anyone.
No matter how strict Shen Tilan was,
She was still an elder after all.
but Shenze, that absolute terror who grew up in the military compound,
If he found out someone dared to point a finger at his precious son and call him a bastard, he really is capable of breaking Li Che's leg.
I stopped looking at him.
I turned on my heel and rushed out of the office. The hallway was already empty.
I bolted downstairs.
Shen Chuan's black Audi was just starting up. I ran over, yanked the back door open, and threw myself inside.
Semtulan was sitting there.
Clutching Shenan tightly in her arms, using a wet towel to gently wipe his face.
When she saw me get in,
Her lips parted slightly, but in the end, she didn't say a word.
old Zhang
The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror and silently stepped on the gas. The car drove smoothly out of the residential compound gates. The silence inside the car was suffocating. The only sound was Shenan, burning up with a high fever, letting out weak, painful whimpers.
I stared out the window as the city streets flashed past.
My mind completely blank. I made a scene. I smashed everything.
But what now? My marriage to Shenze, which had long been dead in all but name, and this twisted, dysfunctional relationship with my mother-in-law. How is this all going to end? I didn't know. All I knew was,
From the moment I kicked that door open, there was no turning back. The car was moving fast. Sensulan kept trying to bring Shenan's fever down with the wet towel,
her movements incredibly gentle.
yet awkwardly stiff. It was obvious she hadn't taken care of a child in a very long time. After a while, she suddenly spoke up, her voice raspy. Shenze hasn't been home for a month, has he? Yeah.
I kept my eyes on the window, not looking back at her. Not even a single phone call?
He did.
I said. He called once, 3 days ago.
Sentulen froze.
What did he say?
I turned my head to look at her. He said he's doing great out there and told us, mother and son, to leave him alone.
He said he found his true love.
He even said, I paused for a moment and forced a smile that looked more painful than crying. He told me to stop spending his money. He said he's tight on cash right now because he has someone else to support. The air inside the car instantly froze. Shentuan gripped the child so tightly that her knuckles turned stark white. She stared at me, her eyes filled with an overwhelming mix of emotions. After a long, heavy silence, she finally gritted her teeth and spat out, that absolute scoundrel. The emergency lobby of the central hospital was bustling with people. The sharp smell of disinfectant filled the air, making my head spin. A nurse led Shadan inside for an examination, leaving Chinchilan and me waiting outside. The two of us sat on the cold plastic bench, with an empty seat keeping us apart. Neither of us said a word. Suddenly, Shen Chilan's phone rang. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. It was old Down, her driver. She answered it, her voice instantly regaining its usual commanding authority. Director, that kid is still waiting in your office. What should we do with him? Shen Chulin's brow furrowed into a tight knot. Tell him to get the hell out. But he claims he's a relative from your side of the family, and he refuses to leave. I don't have any relatives that brainless. Shetuan's voice was ice cold. This? Tell him that starting tomorrow, I never want to see his face in this compound again, and tell him to brace himself for when Shenzi gets back. She hung up the phone, slamming it down onto the empty seat beside her, making a loud, dull thud. I stared at her tense profile. This woman was used to having absolute control over everything. Today, the two most important things in her life, son and her grandson, had both spun completely out of control. The emergency room door swung open, and a known doctor walked out, pulling off his mask. Who are Shen An's family members? Chen Shluan and I both stood up at the same time. I'm his mother. I'm his grandmother. Our eyes met, but we both quickly looked away. The doctor paused for a second. Then he said, "The child is showing early signs of a seizure triggered by a high fever from acute pneumonia. Luckily, you brought him in just in time. We've already admitted him." Fizz. He's in room 302 on the 3rd floor. You two should go get the paperwork sorted out. Hearing the word pneumonia, Senchuan swayed on her feet. I quickly stepped forward to support her. Her arms felt ice cold. "I'll take care of the paperwork," I said. She glanced at me with a look that was incredibly complicated. She nodded, but didn't say a word. I took the forms and went to queue up at the payment window. Not far behind me, Senchuan pulled out her phone and dialed a number again. She kept her voice extremely low, but I still heard her say, "Hello? Check all of Shenzi's travel records over the past month. His spending records, and his hotel check-ins. Yes, everything. I don't care what it takes. I want to see all the files before dark." Her voice carried a dangerous, ruthless edge, like a storm brewing. After I paid the fees and collected the stack of receipts, I went back to where we were. Senchuan was gone. My heart sank instantly. I rushed toward the elevators. The elevator doors were just about to close. I squeezed myself inside. Shen Julen was standing in the corner, staring at her own reflection on the closed doors. I couldn't tell what she was thinking. There were other people in the elevator with us, so we still didn't say a word to each other. When we reached the 3rd floor, we found room 302. Shed An was already lying in the hospital bed. He had an 4 drip hooked up to his tiny hand. His little face looked even more pale and exhausted against the white sheets. He was fast asleep. His breathing was very soft. Senchulen stood by the bedside. She just stood there, quietly staring at him. I walked over, pulled up a chair for her and said, "Please, take a seat." She didn't move. Her eyes never left her grandson's face. After a long, painful silence, she finally spoke. Her voice sounded like it was drifting in from far away. "Do you hate me?" I didn't expect her to ask that. I looked at my son on the hospital bed, shook my head, and said, "No, I don't. I'm just tired." Yes, tired. Not physically, but emotionally. It was like a rubber band that had been stretched to its limit for 5 years. And today, it finally snapped. Senchulan's shoulders slumped. She slowly sank into the chair and buried her face in her hands. This was the first time I had ever seen her look so fragile. Gone was her authority as the director. Gone was her imposing aura as the chairwoman. She was just a grieving grandmother, suffering for her disappointing son and her sick grandson. The hospital room was dead silent, save for the sound of medicine dripping from the 4 tube, echoing heavily in our hearts with every drop. I don't know how much time passed, but my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. I walked out into the hallway before answering it. "Hello?" From the other end of the line came a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years, yet it was instantly, agonizingly familiar. A woman's voice. "Lane Shi, it's me." My mind started to buzz. It was her. Shenzi's first love. Juro. The woman who had gone abroad to study 5 years ago. She was back. "Please." Julru's voice sounded exactly the same as it did 5 years ago, dripping with her usual effortless superiority. "I'm back," she said, "and I'm right here in the hospital where your son is staying." I gripped my phone, my knuckles turning white. "How do you know that?" "Shenza told me." She let out a soft chuckle. "He's with me right now. We just got off the plane. We heard the baby was sick, so we decided to drop by." "Ling Shi, let's meet up. Right in the cafe downstairs from the hospital." His tone was purely demanding, not open for discussion. Before I could even reply, the call went dead. I stood frozen at the end of the hallway, the icy wind from the window biting at my face. Yet I couldn't feel the chill at all. The blood in my veins had already run completely cold. Sensei, he's back. Bringing his true love back with him. Right when our son is hospitalized with a high fever because of his month-long neglect. He actually came back. I walked back to the ward door, looking inside. Through the glass window, Senchulan was still sitting there, her back looking so frail and lonely. I can't let her know that Joe Room is here. At least, not yet. I took a deep breath to compose myself, pushed the door open, and walked in. "Mom." It was the first time I had ever called her that. Senchulan looked up, looking at me with a hint of surprise. "I'm going downstairs to get a few things. Please watch over N." She nodded, her lips trembling slightly. Actually, she wanted to say something, but in the end, she stayed silent. I turned and walked away, pressing the button for the elevator. The elevator doors slid open, revealing 2 people standing inside. Shinza and Joru, clinging tightly to his arm. Shinza looked thinner and tanter, wearing a stylish jacket. His hair was cropped short, and his eyes were filled with exhaustion and impatience. Joru was as beautiful as ever, with flawless makeup, wearing a long, elegant beige dress. When she saw me, a triumphant smirk spread across her face. Shezar froze the moment he saw me. Instinctively, he tried to pull his arm away from Joru, but she only clung to him even tighter. "Ling,
He called out my name.
his voice dry and raspy.
I didn't even look him in the eye.
My gaze fell entirely on his empty hands. He came back to see his critically ill son,
But he didn't bring a single thing. I stepped into the elevator, stared at the corner, and pressed the button for the first floor.
the elevator doors shut slowly.
Shutting out the rest of the world.
So, how is he?
Shenzi finally broke the silence. Pneumonia, I spat out. Is it serious? He asked.
He won't die.
My voice was freezing cold.
Cold as ice. Shen.
Ji's face instantly darkened.
Ru, who was standing beside him, spoke up. Lingxi,
Please don't be like this.
Azur is really worried about the baby, too. We rushed straight here the moment we got off the plane. Our luggage is still in the car.
As she spoke, she gently patted Shenzi's arm with her other hand, as if she were soothing a restless pet.
Looking at their intimate reflection on the elevator wall,
My stomach churned with disgust.
the elevator reached the first floor, and the doors slid open.
I was the first to step out.
Sheza and Joru followed close behind me.
We sat down at a table by the window.
Juru naturally slid in next to Shenzhe, but pushed the menu toward me. What would you like to drink?
My treat. I looked at her and suddenly smirked. Miss Joe.
In what capacity are you buying me a drink? Joru's smile stiffened. Shenzhe frowned. Lin Si.
Watch your tone. What's wrong with my tone? I glared at him. Or is it that after being with your true love for so long,
You've forgotten how to understand human language? Shenzi's face flushed bright red in anger.
Say, don't be angry.
Joel held him back.
And then turned her gaze to me.
her eyes filled with a trace of pity.
Lingxi, I know how hard it's been for you.
You've suffered so much these past 5 years,
Ozzy and I didn't get back together.
just to hurt you.
It's just, some feelings are truly beyond our control. They has always loved only me.
She pulled a bank card out of her purse.
And gently slid it across the table toward me. There is $500,000 in here.
Consider it a little compensation from us. Your marriage to Z was a mistake from the very beginning. It is time to end it. As for Anam, she paused,
A gentle, patronizing smile spreading across her face. Don't worry, I'll treat him like my very own child. I stared down at the bank card.
then looked up at her pathetic, self-righteous face.
I picked up the untouched glass of lemonade on the table and splashed it right into her face. Water dripped down Ru's hair.
And ran down her cheeks.
A slice of lemon clung pitifully to her expensive dress.
The smile on her face completely froze.
Her eyes widened, filled with absolute disbelief. Every eye in the cafe turned to look at us. Joru family snapped out of it and shrieked. Lindsay, are you insane?
Shenzhe bolted upright, instantly shielding Joru behind him.
And glaring at me. I stood up to meet his gaze. I'm insane? Shenzo, why don't you look deep into your own conscience and tell me who is the one who has actually gone mad?
My son is lying upstairs, burning up with pneumonia. And here you are, bringing this woman to demand a divorce.
You are offering me $500,000 to buy out 5 years of my youth and strip away my custody of my own son. Do you honestly think you're worthy? Shenzhe stood there, completely stunned by my outburst. He stared at me, a flicker of guilt passing through his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anger. Those are two completely different things.
I am sorry that Anan is sick.
But our marriage was already over a long time ago.
Our marriage was over? I sneered. So that gives you the right to not come home for an entire month?
Ignoring my calls, refusing to answer my texts, leaving me all alone with a sick child, with absolutely no one to turn to? So you could gallivant around abroad with your first love without a single shred of guilt, and then come back, throw a bank card in my face and tell me to get lost? Shenza, are you even human?
The whispers around us grew louder and louder.
Look at him. His kid is sick, and he's still fooling around with his mistress. The poor wife. She's so pitiful. Every word stabbed into Shenzi's ears like needles. His face turned pale, then flushed red with embarrassment. He grabbed Jolu's hand, trying to storm off. I'm not going to argue with you here. I stepped right in front of him, blocking his way.
You think you can just walk away?
Not that easy. Today we are going to settle this once and for all. You want a divorce? Fine, I'll sign the papers right now.
But I have 3 conditions. Shenzi stopped in his tracks, glaring at me with utter impatience. Spit it out then.
First, the house we've been living in after we married goes to me. No way. That's the wedding house my mother bought for me. It's premarital property. I let out a cold laugh. Both of our names are on the deed.
That makes it joint marital property.
If we take this to court, I'll get at least half of it.
Do you really want to drag this into a courtroom?
And let everyone know you cheated on me? That you abandoned the wife who gave birth to your son? If we do, where's your mother, Shenxulan, going to hide her face? Sinzi's lips trembled,
But he couldn't find any words to say.
Second, I get full custody of Anan, and you will pay 10,000 yuan in child support every single month until he turns 18. On top of that, you will cover all of his education funds and all of his health insurance. 10,000?
Why don't you just rob a bank? Shenzai yelled out in disbelief. Rob you? I stared at him. Compared to the 300,000 yuan international school your other child goes to. Is 10,000 yuan really that much? Oh, I forgot. You're probably a little tight on cash right now, since you have to support someone else. I cast a cold glance at Zhou Ru standing behind him. Shenz's face turned completely dark. And third, I raised my voice, emphasizing every word. You and your precious Miss Zhou here must go to the ward right now and apologize to my son. Apologize for your utter failure as a father. Apologize for never being there when he needed you. And apologize for every single nasty word you just said. Why on earth should we? Zhou Ru shrieked. She had already wiped the water off her face, but her makeup was completely ruined. She looked like an absolute clown. She was the one who splashed me, and I'm the one who has to apologize. I completely ignored him. I just stared at him, forcing him to choose between those three conditions. Agree, and we'll go file for divorce tomorrow. If you refuse, then I'll see you in court. And, Shunze, the choice is yours. I threw the choice entirely back at him. I knew his biggest fear was making a scene, or bringing shame to his mother. Shenzi clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. His chest was heaving violently. He glared at me, his eyes burning with struggle and fury. After a whole minute, he finally squeezed the words out from between his teeth. I agree. With that, he grabbed Zhou Ru and stormed out of the cafe without looking back. As I watched their retreating backs, all the strength was instantly drained from my body. I collapsed back into my chair, shaking all over. I knew I had won this round, but my heart felt completely hollow. I couldn't feel a single ounce of joy from this victory. Right then, my phone rang. It was Shangela. I composed myself, trying to make my voice sound normal. Mom, where are you? Her voice was frantic. I'm downstairs. Coming up right now. Something is wrong with On. I threw down my phone and sprinted toward the elevator like crazy. The words, something is wrong with Anon, hit my heart like a sledgehammer. The elevator hadn't arrived yet, so I spun around and bolted for the stairwell. I ran all the way up to the third floor in one breath, my lungs burning like fire. Rushing to the door of room 302, I saw two nurses and a doctor gathered around Shenan's bed. Santulan stood to the side, her face pale as a ghost, her hands tightly gripping the edge of the bed. What's wrong, doctor? What's wrong with my son? I rushed forward, my voice trembling uncontrollably. The doctor turned to look at me, his expression grave. The child suddenly had a seizure and lost consciousness. It's an acute febrile seizure brought on by the high fever. We've already given him emergency treatment, but his condition is still unstable. We can't get his temperature down. He needs to be transferred to the ICU immediately. A ICU? My mind went completely blank. The entire room spinning around me. I nearly collapsed right there. Her grip incredibly tight. Her nails dug deep into my flesh as she hissed. Pull yourself together. The sky isn't falling. The nurses were already pulling the 4 out of Shenan's hand, preparing to move his gurney. I stared at my son's tightly closed eyes, his tiny body shivering slightly under the blanket, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. Falling to my knees, I cried, Doctor, please, you have to save him. I choked out, unable to form a coherent sentence. We will do everything we can, the doctor said. The doctor said, as he and the nurses rushed the gurney out of the room. Sentulan and I followed right behind them, practically running. The wheels of the gurney spun rapidly down the hallway, making a harsh, rattling noise that felt like it was crushing my heart. Just then, this Intima, thinking to them, the elevator doors slid open, and Shenzi and Zhou Ru stepped out. They must have heard the commotion and headed right toward us. When Shenzi saw our unconscious son on the gurney and the chaotic scene, his face drained of color. Mom, Ling Shi, what happened? Sainturin whipped her head around, her eyes terrifyingly bloodshot. She glared at Shenzhe, then at Zhou Ru behind him, looking utterly pathetic with her smudged makeup. All of her anger, pain, and fear finally found an outlet at this very moment. She rushed forward and raised her hand, putting all her strength into a brutal slap right across Shenzi's face. The sharp crack echoed loudly through the entire hallway. Everyone was completely stunned, including the doctors and nurses pushing the gurney. The blow whipped Shenzi's head to the side, his cheek instantly swelling up, bright red. You actually have the nerve to ask what's wrong? Shantuling pointed at Shenan on the gurney, her voice shrieking in agonizing heartbreak. Your son is being rushed to the ICU. Are you happy now? Shenza, how could I have given birth to a monster like you? For the sake of this woman, you threw away your family and abandoned your own son. If anything happens to him today, I'm telling you, I will beat you to death first. And then I'll kill this little homewrecker. She pointed at Zhou Ru, trembling violently with rage. Terrified, Zhou Ru shrinked behind Shizhe, not even daring to lift her head. Sumze clutched his face, looking at his mother, and then at his son, who was clinging to life on the gurney. His eyes were filled with deep regret and terror. Mom, Don't call me Mom. I don't have a son like you. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Beside them, the doctor urgently pressed the family. Don't delay any longer. We need to get him in there right away. Snapping back to my senses,
I wiped my tears and said to Shen Tuan, Mom, saving the child is what matters most right now. Shen Tulan seemed to snap out of it. She gave Shenze one last venomous glare, then turned and ran alongside the gurney toward the ICU. I followed closely behind her. As I passed Shenze, I didn't even look at him, only speaking in a whisper that only the two of us could hear. Not a single one of you is getting away with this. I will make sure you leave this marriage with absolutely nothing, completely penniless. And I will make sure you never see your son again for the rest of your life. With that, I didn't linger any longer and quickly caught up. Behind me, Shenzi and Joru suppressed angry whispers echoed, but I was in no mood to listen. My entire world was reduced to that blinding, flashing red light above the ICU door. Outside the ICU was a long, silent corridor. Shatulin and I sat on the bench, like two lifeless statues. Time seemed to drag, thick and agonizingly slow. Every single second was pure torture.
Shentulin's phone rang countless times.
Calls from her company. Phones from the family estate.
She rejected every single one of them.
Finally, she just turned off her phone completely. This woman, who had been a powerhouse in the business world her entire life, now only wanted to be an ordinary grandmother, waiting for news of her grandson. I don't know how much time passed.
Senza walked over alone.
Joru was nowhere to be seen. The swelling on his face hadn't gone down yet, leaving him looking haggard and absolutely pathetic. He stopped a few feet away from us, not daring to come any closer.
Mom, he rasped, his voice hoarse.
Santulin completely ignored him. Her eyes remained glued to the ICU doors. Shinsa then turned to me. Licia, shut up. I cut him off. My voice was icy cold. You have no right to even speak his name.
Shenzi's shoulders slumped.
He sank onto the bench opposite us, burying his face in his hands as he hung his head in sheer misery. Once again, the corridor fell into a dead silence. It was a suffocating silence, far worse than any screaming match. Finally, the ICU doors swung open. It was the same young doctor. He pulled off his mask, his face etched with exhaustion. Santulan and I jumped to our feet instantly and rushed toward him. Doctor, how is my grandson?
Doctor, my son? The doctor raised his hand, gesturing for us to calm down. Take a deep breath. The child is out of danger.
Hearing those words, my knees buckled and I nearly collapsed onto the floor. But her own body was trembling slightly too. His fever has broken and his vitals are stable. Stable? But since it's acute pneumonia, he needs to stay in the ICU for 24 hours of observation, just to make sure he doesn't relapse. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Shane Julin grabbed the doctor's hand, thanking him over and over again. I joined in, repeatedly thanking him as well, with tears streaming down my face. They were tears of joy. Across from us, Shenzi stood up, a look of sheer relief washing over his face. Once the doctor left, the ICU doors shut once again. But this time, we could all finally breathe a sigh of relief. Shintuan let go of me and walked over to Shenze.
She didn't hit him this time.
Nor did she yell at him. She just stared at him, her eyes filled with nothing but disappointment and exhaustion. Just leave, she said.
Shanso froze. I told you to leave. Shentulian's voice was incredibly calm,
but that quiet tone was far more chilling than any explosive rage.
Until Anand is out of the ICU,
I don't want to see your face. As for that woman, she paused. You tell her, if she ever dares to show her face in front of anyone in the Shen family again, I can't promise what I might do to her. I, Shen Shonan, have lived a long life, and I can endure any hardship, but I never let anyone take advantage of me. Senza's lips trembled, wanting to say something, but not a single word came out. He looked at me, then back at his mother. Finally, he bowed deeply, and he turned and dragged his heavy feet away, his back looking incredibly lonely and broken. Once again, only Shen Xiuan and I were left in the corridor. She walked back to the bench and sat down. I sat down right next to her. You should go back and get some rest, too. I'll watch over things here. I shook my head. I'm not leaving, waiting for him to come out. Shen Xiuan glanced at me. She didn't push any further. Just took a card out of her bag and handed it to me. There's some money in here.
The pin is your birthday.
I stared at the black card, making no move to take it. I don't want it. Take it, she insisted. Her tone left no room for argument. Buy something good for Anand. He needs to nourish his body. I won't interfere between you and Shenze anymore. But Adan is a grandchild of the Shen family, and I won't let anyone mistreat him. I looked at her, my heart a tangled mess of emotions. This mother-in-law of mine, who had been overbearing her entire life, was trying to apologize and make amends in her own way. Doing that, I took the card, not for the money, but because I knew she would only feel more guilty if I refused.
Thank you, Mom,
I said softly.
Shantulan's body stiffened.
Then, she gave a soft, quiet grunt of acknowledgement. Yeah, the icy wall between us seemed to finally crack,
just a little. Over the next 24 hours, neither of us closed our eyes for a second. We just sat there, guarding the ICU doors. When we got hungry, we had our driver, old Zhang, bring us some food. When we got tired, we just nodded off in our chairs. We barely spoke. We could behold each other's presence. A subtle, unspoken bond was quietly forming between us. 24 hours later, Shen An was finally transferred from the ICU to a regular ward. He was awake. Though he was still weak, he looked much better. He looked at me,
And then it Shen Tulan.
and gave a weak smile. Mom, Grandma! Shen Yuan's eyes welled with tears instantly. She rushed to his side and gently stroked her grandson's face. Oh, sweetie, Grandma's right here. As I watched this scene unfold, my heart finally began to settle. The crushing weight on my chest has finally lifted. My son is going to be okay. I can finally start over. After spending a few more days in the hospital,
Shenan had almost fully recovered. On the day we were discharged,
Sen Tulan came in person to pick up Lao Zhang. We all drove back to the residential compound together, but the car didn't stop in front of the old building where I used to live. Instead, she drove straight to the best building in the compound. It was a newly renovated luxury flat.
it was Shen's marital home. And the place where, ever since our wedding,
I hadn't stayed even once. Shen Tulan carried the sleeping Shen An and got out of the car first. She looked back at me and said, "Get out of the car. From today on, you two will live here." Standing in front of that brand new security door, I hesitated. This was my home on paper. A home I had never once set foot in. Shen Tulan had already unlocked the door with her keys. "Come on in. What are you standing there for?"
he carried Shenan and walked inside.
I followed her. The apartment was huge and incredibly empty. All the furniture was covered in white dust sheets, looking like a bunch of silent ghosts. The air was thick with the smell of fresh paint and dust. This place had been renovated before Shen's and I got married. It had been sitting empty ever since.
Shen Tulan gently laid Shenan down the large bed in the master bedroom.
"I originally thought you'd move in here officially after the wedding." She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with mixed emotions. I never expected it would be dragged out for 5 years. I didn't say a word. I just looked around this completely unfamiliar space. Everything here was decorated according to Shen Zi's tastes. The cold-toned walls, the minimalist furniture, and a massive room that had been turned into a gaming room, filled with high-tech gear I didn't even recognize. There wasn't a single trace of me here. "You and Anan stay here for now.
Shen Tulan-san.
I'll have a cleaning service come over and replace everything in the house. We'll swap it all out for things you and Anan like. As for Shenzi, until he cleans up his own mess, he won't be coming back." I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was trying to give both of us an easy way out. She wanted to patch things up between us. She wanted to keep her only grandson. I looked at her and said calmly, "I think we still need to talk." Shen Tulan froze for a second, then she nodded. "Okay, go ahead." We sat down on the sofa, which was draped in white dust sheets. I looked her straight in the eye. I said word by word, "Shenzi and I must get a divorce. This is a decision I thought through long and hard. I'm not doing this out of anger, and I'm not trying to threaten you. Once some things are broken, they're broken. You can never piece them back together." Shen Tulan's brow furrowed deeply, but she didn't fly into a rage like I expected. She just stared at me in silence. "Is it because of Joe-Ru?" "Not entirely," I said, shaking my head. Joe-Ru was just the trigger. The issues between Shenzi and his B have been there for a long time. For these past 5 years, we've been like two strangers living under the same roof. He has his life, and I have my own circle. Our only connection is Am. I thought I could keep putting up with it for the sake of our child. Oh, but now, I realize I was wrong. A loveless home only hurts a child more. I don't want Anan to grow up in an environment filled with lies and indifference. I looked at her, my gaze sincere. "Mom, I know you want to make things up to my son and me, and I appreciate everything you've done for us. But this apartment, these material things, they can't heal the pain in my heart, nor can they salvage a marriage that's already dead. This isn't what I want." Sintuan's lips thinned into a straight line. "Then what is it you want?" "I want my freedom," I said. "I want to take Anan and start our own life. A life where I don't have to walk on eggshells around anyone, or constantly compromise myself. I'll leave with nothing. I don't want a single thing. All I want is custody of Anan." I stated my final and only demand. A long, heavy silence settled over the living room. Sunlight filtered through the window, stretching long patches of light across the floor. I could hear Shen Jiwan's heavy, ragged breathing. I knew this decision of mine was another devastating blow to him. He had just lost all control over his own son, and now he was facing the risk of losing his grandson, too. After what felt like an eternity, he finally, slowly, broke the silence. His voice was incredibly raspy and strained. "And what if I don't agree? What if I don't agree? Then we'll see each other in court." I met his gaze head on, refusing to back down even an inch. Although the evidence I have of Shenzi's infidelity during our marriage Who do you think the judge is going to give custody to? Shen Tuan slowly closed his eyes, a deep, exhausting weariness washing over his face. He waved his hand dismissively. Let me think about it. Just give me some time. I knew this battle was far from over, but at least I had clearly laid my cards on the table. Over the next few days, I stayed in that massive house with Shen An for the time being. Shen Tuan didn't show his face again, but every day he had his driver, Old Zhang, deliver various health supplements and toys for Anan. He didn't even send anyone to replace the old furniture. The house felt like a temporary transit station, awkwardly suspended in time.
Shenze and I hadn't spoken either.
I had no idea where he was or what was happening between him and Zhou Ru. And honestly, I didn't care. I started searching for divorce lawyers online, consulting them about the legalities of the separation. I meticulously gathered all my financial and expense records from the past 5 years, along with the occasional wire transfers Shen had sent me. I had to be completely prepared for the upcoming custody battle. I even started planning our future, leaving this city for good, moving somewhere where absolutely nobody knew us, finding a new job, and enrolling an N in a brand new preschool. A completely fresh start. But just when I thought everything was going according to plan, an unexpected guest showed up. It was Zhou Ru. She didn't call first and came straight to my doorstep. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, helping an animal build with his Legos. The doorbell rang. When I looked through the video monitor and saw her face, my brow furrowed instantly. She looked completely worn out. No makeup, and her eyes were red and swollen. She was a far cry from the glamorous woman I'd seen at the hospital that day. I didn't open the door. She just stood there, shouting through the intercom. Lindsay, open the door. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. It's about Shenze. Her voice was thick with tears. Something's happened to him. Shenze was in trouble. Zhou Ru's voice was shrill, cracking with absolute despair. My heart skipped a beat. But then, a wave of suspicion washed over me. Was this just another act? Another elaborate sob story? Why should I believe you? I asked coldly through the intercom. His mother locked him up. Zhou Ru cried even harder. His phone's been taken away. His credit cards are blocked. His mother won't let him see me. Lindsay, I know you hate me, and you hate him. But right now, you're the only one who can help him. I beg you, please talk to Director Shen. Tell her to let Shenzi go. Listening to her frantic, incoherent rambling, the pieces slowly fell into place. Santulen had finally made her move, and her methods were far more direct and ruthless than I'd imagined. She didn't bother going after Zhou Ru. Instead, she went straight for the jugular and locked down Shenze. Without a dime to his name, and stripped of his freedom, what value did Shenze even have to Zhou Ru anymore? Lingxi, open the door. Let's talk face to face. Zhou Ru was still crying and screaming outside. I looked at my son, who was in the living room, completely focused on building his Lego, and felt a sudden wave of irritation. I didn't want this toxic drama anywhere near him. I walked over and opened the door. Zhou Ru instantly tried to push her way inside, like a drowning woman desperately clutching at a lifeline. I put my hand out, blocking her. Say what you have to say right here. Zhou Ru froze. She stared at my cold, expressionless face, and her tears began to pour even faster. Linxi, I know I was wrong. I never should have come back. I shouldn't have wrecked your marriage. I actually believed Shenze really loved me, and that he'd fight his family to the very end for my sake. But I never expected him to be such a spineless coward. She started sobbing, venting her frustration. Just one word from his mother, and he was shaking in his boots like a pathetic little child. He does absolutely everything she says. He claims he loves me, yet he doesn't even have the guts to show his face. I don't want a pathetic man like that anymore. She sobbed, pulling a flight itinerary out of her bag. She slammed it down in front of me. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going back to Canada, and I am never coming back. But before I go, I just want to see him one last time and get some closure. Lingxi, please, will you help me? She grabbed my arm tightly, her eyes pleading with desperation. I looked down at her tear-stained, pathetic face, but I felt absolutely no pity for her. If you knew it would end like this, why did you do it in the first place? Why on earth should I help you? I asked coldly. Because. Shoro beat her lip, clearly struggling with a difficult choice. Finally, stealing her resolve, she pulled a USB drive from her bag and forced it into my hand. Because of this, I stared at her, deeply confused. What is this? This is the leverage I have on Shenze.
Zhou Ru lowered her voice to a whisper.
A flash of pure venom in her eyes. It's dirt far worse than just him cheating on you. It's proof of all the shady things he's been doing behind his mother's back. Hand this over to Director Shen. He'll know exactly what to do with it. I have only one condition. Let me see Shenzi. Just once. We gripped the flash drive in my hand, feeling like it was a red-hot branding iron. I had no idea what was on it, but you know one thing. This had to be Zhou Ru's final, most ruthless act of revenge. Since she couldn't have Shenze, she was going to completely destroy him. I'm begging you! Zhou Ru cried, seeing my hesitation. She pleaded once more. Give this to Director Shen. He'll know exactly what to do. I only have one request.
Let me see Shenzhe. Just once.
I stared at her, silent for a long, heavy moment. Finally, I nodded. I can arrange that for you, I said. But not right now. Tomorrow afternoon at 3, at the cafe across from the hospital. I can only guarantee he'll show up. But as for how long he'll stay, so, I don't know.
Relieved, Joro's face lit up.
Okay. Thank you, Linshi. Thank you so much, she cried, thanking me over and over. She turned and practically ran out the door. I shut the door and leaned against it, staring down at the flash drive in my hand. My entire plan had been thrown into chaos. A massive, uncontrollable wild card had just been shoved into my hands. I walked into my study, booted up a computer, and plugged the drive in. There was only one encrypted folder inside. Just then, my phone buzzed with the password from Shou. I took a deep breath to steady myself and entered the password to open it. What I saw inside instantly chilled me to the bone. There were no photos or videos like I'd expected. Instead, it was filled with endless, dense spreadsheets, scanned contract documents, and bank statements. I'm not a business person, so a lot of it made no sense to me. But there was one thing I could understand perfectly. Those staggering numbers, counting in tens of thousands and millions, writhed across the screen like a nest of venomous snakes. But the most eye-catching thing of all was an investment agreement. Party A was Shenzhe, and Party B was some tech company I'd never even heard of. Investment amount? 30 million. The contract was dated 3 years ago. And as for the source of those funds, I tracked down the bank statements, digging deeper, and my heart almost stopped beating. That money came straight from an affiliated account of Shen Qiulan's company. Same for off in batches under completely different, fake pretexts.
生子，以押局问必函申期往300。
He embezzled 30 million in company funds just to invest in his own project. I kept scrolling. Below that were the tech company's financial reports from the last 3 years. Losses. Massive, devastating losses. That 30 million had been completely wiped out long ago. At the very bottom of the folder was an audio recording. I clicked play. It was a conversation between Shenzi and Zhou. Wrong. Please, just trust me one more time. This project is going to turn around very soon. When that happens, let alone 30 million, I can easily make 300 million back. That was Shenzi's voice, sounding frantic and desperate. Turn around? Aziz, wake up. This is nothing but a bottomless pit. Zhou's voice sounded utterly hopeless. You've thrown all the company's money into this hole. If Aunt Shen ever finds out, you're completely finished. She won't find out. I'm the one managing those accounts. I make sure the books are absolutely flawless. Flawless? Do you really think Aunt Shen is an idiot? She's going to audit the books sooner or later. Well, even if she does, that won't be until the end of the year. I still have time. All I need is for the next round of funding to come through. And with that, the recording cut off. I sat in front of the computer screen, my hands and feet going completely numb with cold. I finally understood why Shenza hadn't come home for an entire month. He wasn't out there living it up with Zhou. He's running from his debts. He's trying to fill that $30 million black hole. And now, I finally understand why he agreed to those 3 brutal divorce conditions I said. Because he was terrified. Terrified that I'd blow this wide open to Shen Qiulan. Having Shen Zluman audit his books, compared to losing a single house in a divorce settlement. Embezzling $30 million is a crime that would utterly ruin him forever. Damjotru. She clearly knew about this all along. Her coming back this time had absolutely nothing to do with rekindling some old flame. She was after the money. She wanted to pressure Shenzhe into squeezing more money out of the Shen family. To fill that hole? Or maybe just to get her own cut of the spoils. But she overestimated Jinze. And she sorely underestimated Shen Yuan. Shen Tilin's iron-fisted retaliation blew up right in her face. Furious and humiliated, she handed this ticking time bomb, one that could utterly destroy Shenzi, straight to me. She wanted to use my hands to detonate it. I shut down my computer and pulled out the USB flash drive. I clutched it tightly in my fist. What am I supposed to do now? If I hand this drive over to Shen Yuan, Shenzhe is completely finished. He will definitely end up behind bars. But what about Shen Yuan? She would have to watch her own child's life be utterly ruined. The business empire she spent her entire life building would be shattered by a scandal of this magnitude. And my son, Shenan, he would have a convict for a father. That stain would haunt him for the rest of his life. But if I keep quiet, the secret will hang over us like a ticking time bomb. I'll never know when it's going to blow. Besides, I refuse to blackmail the Shen family with this just to get what I want. If I did that, how would I be any different from Zhou? I stand up, pacing back and forth in the empty, silent room. My mind is a complete mess. Anger, shock, confusion, and a creeping sense of dread. For the first time, I see the absolute rot and darkness lurking beneath the glamorous facade of high society. And for the first time, I feel a terrifying wave of anxiety for my son's future. And my own. I can't just sit here and wait for the blow to fall. I have to take control. I had to act before everything completely spiraled out of control. I needed to secure the safest way out for myself and Anon. I picked up my phone and dialed Shen Qiluan's number. The phone rang for what felt like forever before she finally answered. Hello? Her voice sounded utterly exhausted. Mom,
It's me. I did my best to keep my voice steady.
I think we need to talk. One last time. About Shenze and about Anon's future.
I have something in my hands
That I think you'll want to see. Sentuan arrived incredibly fast. She came alone, without even her driver. The moment she stepped into the empty house, the very first words out of her mouth were, "Where is another?" Taking a nap in his room, she nodded slowly and walked straight to the study. "Where is it?" I didn't say a word. I simply plugged the flash drive into the laptop. I didn't open the encrypted folder. Instead, I clicked on a different file, something I had spent one whole night putting together. A divorce agreement. A detailed plan for Shenan's upbringing and future education, and a complete statement of my personal assets. Sentuan stared at the screen, her brow furrowing deeply. What is the meaning of this? It means... I looked her in the eyes and said calmly, I am still getting a divorce, and I am absolutely taking Anan with me. But I've changed my terms. I turned the screen toward her, pointing at the divorce agreement. I don't want the house. And as for all the money Shenzi, give me, including the cards you gave me, I've already transferred it all back. Here are the transfer records.
I am leaving with absolutely nothing.
An expression of sheer shock washed over Shen Jilan's face. She never could have expected this. When I held the ultimate trump card to utterly ruin Shenzib, I was actually proposing terms like these. What on earth are you trying to do? Her voice was filled with utter confusion and deep suspicion. I'm not trying to pull anything. I just want a clean break. To start my own life. I don't want any financial ties with your family ever again, and I refuse to let my son live under the shadow of the Shen family. I paused, then continued. As for Anand's child support, I don't want a single dime of it. I can support him on my own. But I raised my voice, emphasizing every word. As the eldest grandson of the Shen family, he has every right to inherit his father's estate. This clause must be written into our agreement. 50% of all assets under Shenzi's name must be unconditionally transferred to Anan when he turns 18, and you will notarize and oversee this trust. Sen Shulin glared at me, his eyes locked onto mine, as if trying to find even a single crack in my composure. You hold Shenzi's lifeblood in your hands. This is all you are asking for? He scoffed in disbelief. I nodded at him. Yes, just for this. Because I don't want my son to have a father who's behind bars. I had finally revealed my true motive. Sen Chulin's entire body jolted. He stared at me in absolute shock. You know everything? I didn't say a word. Instead, I simply hovered the cursor over the encrypted folder. Do you want to see it? The little gift Zhou left behind. Instantly, Shen Chulan's face went completely pale. He reached his hand out as if to stop me. But halfway there, it dropped back down, completely lifeless. He closed his eyes and sank back into his chair, as if every ounce of his strength had been sucked dry. No. Close it, he muttered hoarsely. Deep down, a man as sharp as him must have already known the truth. Shisenza's bizarre behavior, Zhou sudden appearance. There was no way he hadn't noticed. He just chose not to believe it. Or rather, he didn't dare tear open that bloody, festering wound. But now, a daughter-in-law he had never once respected, had ripped it wide open for him. Silence fell over the study once again. Heavy and suffocating. Shentuan remained silent. He just kept his eyes shut, his chest heaving with heavy, ragged breaths. It was clear he was fighting a brutal war within himself, after what felt like an eternity. She finally opened her eyes. The shock and anger in her gaze had completely vanished, leaving behind only a bottomless, soul-crushing exhaustion and sorrow. What kind of guarantee do you want? She asked. I need you to sign this divorce agreement, I replied. As a witness, I continued. And tomorrow, Shenzi and I will go finalize the divorce. Also, Zhou wants to see Shenzi one last time. I promised her she could. Sen Tulan stared at me, her eyes swirling with an incredibly complex mix of emotions. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could have easily used this to demand so much more money, even the entire company, and interrupted her. Mom, I told you, I don't want my son to have a father who's behind bars, and I definitely don't want him growing up in a family built on blackmail and dark secrets. Shizasa did do terrible things, and he deserves to be punished. But that punishment should come from you, not me. I am Anan's mother, and all I want is to protect him. My words were like a key, unlocking the final, heaviest gate in Shen Chulan's heart. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then she slowly nodded. All right. She uttered only a single word, but it carried the weight of a mountain. It was one mother's surrender and ultimate respect to another. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, meet me outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. After he sees Zhou, I'll have Shenzei sent there. With that, she stood up, without sparing another glance at the computer screen, and walked out of the study. Just as she reached the door, she paused, without turning around. Lacey, Thank you. Then she opened the door and stepped out. I heard the engine start downstairs, and the sound of her car fading into the distance. Every ounce of my strength vanished in an instant,
And I collapsed into my chair. Staring at the computer screen, I looked at the divorce agreement I had drafted myself. An agreement so heavily skewed, it was practically a declaration of surrender.
I laughed, but as I kept laughing,
The tears just started streaming down.
our freedom. And Anne and A are finally going to be free. The next morning, the sky was dark and gloomy, like a heavy, soaking wet gray rag. I bundled enough in his favorite little dinosaur jacket and took him to the neighborhood daycare. Shentulen had arranged this first thing in the morning.
She said a child shouldn't have to witness any of this. I watched my sweet boy wave his tiny hand, calling out, "Bye, bye, Mommy."
A heart pang of heartache hit me. And from today on, it's just you and me. At 9 o'clock sharp, I arrived right on time at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. A sleek black Mercedes was parked just a short distance away. I knew exactly whose car it was, Shentulen's, but I didn't walk over to it. I just stood there on the steps, waiting quietly. A few minutes passed, and the car door clicked open. Shenzi stepped out, wearing a simple, all-black casual outfit. His hair was neatly styled, but it couldn't hide how incredibly exhausted and beaten down he looked. His eyes were completely bloodshot. The moment he saw me, he quickly looked away, not daring to meet my gaze. Step by slow step, he walked up the stairs, coming to a stop, right next to me. Neither us uttered a single word. We stood there like two complete strangers, waiting for a funeral to begin. Shentulen didn't bother getting out of the car. She just rolled down the window slightly, watching us from a distance.
"Let's go inside,"
I said, breaking the heavy silence first. Shinso let out a raspy, hoarse murmur of agreement. Side by side, we walked into the lobby of the Civil Affairs Bureau, filling out the forms, getting our photos taken, pressing our fingerprints. The entire process moved as fast and mechanical as an assembly line. We didn't exchange a single look or word. The clerk asked in a flat, routine voice, "Are you both doing this voluntarily?" "Yes," I answered, without a shred of hesitation. Shinza hesitated for a brief second before whispering, "Yes." "Have you agreed on property division and custody?" "Everything is settled." When the clerk finally handed us those little green books stamped with the official seal, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Like a heavy, suffocating yoke I had dragged around for 5 long years had finally been lifted. I slipped the book into my bag, turned on my heel, and walked away. "Ling Shi!" Fence's voice called out from behind me. I stopped in my tracks, but I didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Those words, they were so late. "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. It's your son. And..." I paused. "Go make things right with your mother. Stop making her worry about you." With that, I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau without looking back. A light drizzle was falling outside. I didn't open an umbrella, letting the cold raindrops hit my face. It was freezing, but it cleared my head. Shentulen's car was still parked in the same spot. I walked up to the car window, looking at the exhausted woman inside. "It's done," I said. She nodded. She pulled a document from her bag and handed it to me. It was the divorce agreement I had drafted yesterday. It already had her and Shenzi's signatures and fingerprints at the bottom, along with the official stamp from the law firm. There were 3 copies in total. 1 for me, 1 for her, and 1 for the lawyer. "Legally speaking, you have no connection to the Shen family anymore," she said. But she looked at me with pleading eyes. "And then, can I still see him?" "I'll always be his grandmother," I replied. "Anytime you want." Shentulen's eyes welled with tears. He pushed the car door open and stepped out, standing in the rain as she looked at me. "What are your plans now?" "Leave this city. Find a quiet little town and start over." "Do you need any help?" I shook my head. "No, thank you. I'll be fine." We fell into silence once again. The rain was starting to come down harder. "Get back in the car before you get soaked," I said, but she didn't move. Instead, she took a step forward and pulled me into a hug. It was brief, but she held me tight. "Take care," she whispered in my ear. Then, she let go. He turned and got back in the car, slamming the door shut. The black Mercedes glided away in absolute silence, vanishing into the curtain of rain. I stood there frozen, for what felt like eternity. Enter Shenze finally walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. He stared at me, his eyes filled with a storm of complex emotions. 3 in the afternoon. The cafe right across from the hospital. Once I finished saying what I had to say, I turned on my heel and walked toward the bus stop. There was absolutely no need for us to ever speak another word to each other. At 3 in the afternoon, I arrived early at the cafe. I picked a quiet corner by the window, giving me the perfect view of the hospital entrance across the street. I ordered a cup of hot cocoa and waited quietly. Juru arrived first, dragging a medium-sized suitcase. She wore light makeup, but it couldn't hide how utterly exhausted she looked. Seeing me, she gave a strained, anxious smile and whispered, "Thank you." I didn't say a word. I simply gestured toward the seat across from me. The moment she sat down,
She kept checking her watch and glancing out the window, unable to hide her restlessness.
A few minutes later, Shen appeared at the corner of the street.
He walked slowly through the rain under a black umbrella. His steps hesitated for a brief second when he spotted Zhou Ru inside the cafe. Then, he closed his umbrella and pushed open the door.
He didn't even look at me. He walked straight up to Zhou Ru.
The two of them just stood there, staring at one another.
One of them had once loved with a burning passion, while the other thought they could rekindle their old flame. But now all that was left was a tragic, awkward mess.
"You're here," Zhou Ru spoke first, her voice raspy and dry. "Yeah," Shenze muttered. "I'm leaving," Zhou Ru said, pointing to the suitcase beside her. "My flight leaves in an hour." "Okay." Shenzi's response was just a single, cold, Zhou Ru's eyes welled with tears. "Don't you have anything else to say to me?"
Shense fell silent.
He stared at her,
His eyes heavy with guilt.
He felt resentful, but there was no love left. Maybe even he couldn't tell anymore if his obsession with Zhou Ru was actually love or just bitter regret. "I'm sorry." In the end, he still uttered those words. I can't give you the life you want." Tears began to stream down Zhou Ru's face. She let out a laugh, a bitter, hollow laugh that looked more painful than crying. "You can't give me the life I want?"
Have you ever actually thought about what you wanted to give me? You just used me as a convenient excuse to escape your own reality.
You're too cowardly to face your failed investments, too cowardly to stand up to your mother's pressure, and too cowardly to face your dead-end marriage. You begged me to come back from Canada, telling me I was your true love and that you'd fight the entire world for me. But look at you now. One word from your mother, and you crawl right back into your shell like a pathetic coward. Shenze, oh, Shenze, I was so blind to ever believe in you.
Her voice grew louder and more hysterical,
Drawing stares from everyone around us.
Chenzi's face turned incredibly pale.
Keep your voice down. Why should I? Zhou Ru stood up abruptly, pointing right at his face. If you had the guts to do it, why are you so afraid of people talking? You embezzled 30 million, and you lost every single penny of it. You're nothing but an empty shell now. How can you possibly offer me a future? You. Senzi's face flushed a deep, humiliated purple. I sat quietly in the corner, watching this pathetic drama unfold with absolute indifference. So this was their so-called true love. Completely shattered the moment it clashed with money and reality. Enough. I finally spoke up. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to instantly silence them both. They turned to look at me in unison. I stood up and walked over to them. Looking at Zhou Ru, I said, "You're about to miss your flight." Then, turning to Shenze, I added, "And you, it's time to end this pathetic show." I pulled a USB drive out of my bag and slid it across the table. "Zhou Ru, this belongs to you. I'm giving it back." Zhou Ru froze when Shenze saw the USB drive. The color drained from his face. You didn't give it to..." "No," I interrupted smoothly. "I didn't give it to your mother.
This is between the two of you.
I have no interest in getting involved." I turned my gaze back to Zhou Ru. "What you do with it now is entirely up to you. Whether you use it to go to the police or keep it as a little souvenir, do whatever you want. I only have one suggestion. Before you make any decision, think about this. What good does destroying him actually do you?" Having said that, I didn't spare them another glance.
She turned, preparing to leave.
威胁，教授活到烧到你，挨乌拉了。
She looked at me, her eyes filled with extreme complexity. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you helping me? Why did you let me go?" "Not for anyone else. I only did it for my son. I don't want his world to have too many complicated choices." Having said that, and stepped out into the wind and rain. Not another sound came from behind me. I didn't go to the daycare right away to pick up Shan'an.
Holding my umbrella, I walked aimlessly through the rain. The icy water slowly cleared my chaotic thoughts.
I'm finally divorced. Shenze and I, the Chef family and I have completely severed all legal ties. I am free.
But why?
Why does my heart still feel so empty?
I walked to the edge of a river and stopped. The muddy river water churned, just like my life over the past 5 years.
I pulled that green divorce certificate from my bag and stared at it for a long time. Then I raised my hand, wanting to throw it into the river, but halfway through, I stopped. I couldn't throw it away. This is the proof of my rebirth, my badge of honor, forbidding farewell to the past. I carefully placed it back into my bag, as if it were a priceless treasure. I pulled out my phone and started searching for train tickets to the south. I wanted to go somewhere warm. A city, by the sea, a place where nobody knew me, or Ananan. There, I would give him a brand new childhood, filled only with sunshine and laughter. Just as I was about to book the ticket, the phone. Reel to the studio or two.
It was Shen Chulen.
I hesitated for a moment, but answered anyway. "Where are you?" Her voice sounded incredibly calm.
Just walking around outside.
"Come home," she said. "I have something to tell you. We have nothing left to say to each other."
It's not about me.
But when he said it was about Shenze, my heart instantly sank. What happened to him? He took that USB drive and turned himself in. Shen Chulan's voice trembled with a near-total breakdown, a panic I had never heard from her before. I froze right where I stood. My mind went completely blank. He turned himself in? He actually went to turn himself in? Which station? I asked, my voice laced with urgency.
Shen Chulan blurted out an address.
I slammed the phone down and immediately hailed a cab by the roadside. Driver, take me to the West District Police Station. Hurry! The cab sped recklessly through the pouring rain. I stared out the window as the city blurred past, my mind in absolute chaos. I thought Shenzi would take that flash drive and go beg his mother, doing whatever it took to cover the whole thing up. I even imagined him and Juru tearing each other to shreds over that drive. But of all the things, I never, ever expected him to turn himself in. Why would he do that? Was it some sudden, twisted fit of conscience? Or did he just decide to burn it all to the ground? I didn't know. By the time I rushed to the police station, Shen Chulan was already waiting at the entrance. She wasn't even holding an umbrella. She was completely drenched from head to toe. Her messy hair plastered to her face. She looked far more miserable and broken than she did that day at the hospital. The moment she saw me, it was as if she'd found her last lifeline. She grabbed my hands instantly. Her grip was ice cold. Bone-chillingly cold. He's locked himself inside the interrogation room. He refuses to see anyone else. He only wants to see you, he said. Once he sees you, he'll confess to everything. An officer guided me down a long, sterile corridor, and we stopped right outside an interrogation room. Through the one-way glass, I saw Shenze sitting inside. He was slumped in a chair, handcuffed, hanging his head like a prisoner waiting for death row. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. He heard the sound. He slowly raises his head and looks at me. His lips tremble slightly, forcing a smile that looks more painful than crying. You're here. I walk over and sit down opposite him. Between us sits a cold, steel table. Why? I ask. That is the second time today I've had to ask someone why. There is no why. He looks at me, his eyes completely hollow. When you make a mistake, you have to own up to it. I couldn't fill this $30 million hole anymore. Instead of letting you, my mom, and everyone else live in constant fear because of this secret, I'd rather face it and resolve it myself. He looks at me with a look of genuine, heartfelt reflection in his eyes for the very first time. For the past 5 years, I treated you like a safe harbor, a place where I could dock whenever I wanted and walk away from whenever I pleased. I took advantage of your selfless, meticulous care and enjoyed the peaceful stability of having a son and a home. While selfishly chasing after so-called freedom and love, I took everything you did for me completely for granted. It wasn't until Anne got sick, and you threw those divorce papers right in my face, that I finally realized just how terribly wrong I was. I lost you, and I destroyed our home. He raises his handcuffed hands and wipes his face. Once I'm locked up, I'm begging you to look after Mom and Ananine. I know I have absolutely no right to ask this of you, but I really don't know who else to turn to. I stare at him, this man, whom I once loved so deeply and once hated just as fiercely. At this very moment, all of my hatred completely vanishes. All that remains is an unspeakable, hollow sadness. Shenze, I look straight at him. And Anne is my son. Of course I will take care of him. And Mom, she is my mother too. I will look after her as well. Just focus on your rehabilitation while you're in there. When you get out, Anand and I will... Shenna snaps his head up, staring at me in utter disbelief. Tears flood from his bloodshot eyes, streaming down his face, and tries to say something. But he is choking on his tears, unable to utter a single word. All he could do is nod his head frantically, over and over again. I stood up, without giving him another glance, and walked straight out of the interrogation room. Outside, Shen Tulan was leaning against the wall, weeping in silence. I walked over, held her up, and whispered, Mom, let's go home. On the way back, I sat in the back seat with Shen Tulan. We didn't say a single word the entire ride. The rain had already stopped, but the sky remained gloomy and overcast. The city outside the window looked like it had been freshly washed, carrying a damp, quiet coldness. Shen Tulan leaned back against the seat, her eyes closed. It was as if her entire soul had been drained out of her, making her look 10 years older in an instant. I knew that her son surrendering himself was a fatal blow to her. For a woman who had been fiercely proud her entire life, in a single day, she had lost both her son and her pride. The car didn't head back to the family residential compound. Instead, it drove toward a cemetery in the suburbs. I was a bit surprised, but I didn't ask any questions. The driver, old Zhang, pulled up at the cemetery gates and silently handed back 2 bouquets of white chrysanthemums.
先求了.
And turned to me, saying, Walk with me, will you? I nodded my head and followed behind her. The cemetery was deathly quiet.
with only the rustling of the wind blowing through the pine trees. We walked up the stone steps and finally stopped in front of a tombstone.
There was no photo on the headstone.
Only a single name carved into it. Lin Meng. Below it were her dates of birth and death. I stared at the name, and my heart felt like it was being squeezed tight by an invisible hand.
Limon. That was my mother's name.
I whipped my head around to look at Shen Tiwa.
Yeah.
My eyes filled with utter shock and confusion.
Why? Why would she bring me here? Your mother was a very good woman.
Sentulin's voice is incredibly soft.
As if she's speaking to me, she's also talking to herself. She gently places a bouquet of chrysanthemums before the tombstone, brushing the dust off the marker with her hand. Back then, your father, she, and I were the best of friends. We went to the countryside together, returned together, and started working at the same factory. I loved your father, but the one your father loved was her. Shin Chulan's voice is eerily calm, as if she's telling a story that has nothing to do with her. But my heart is in absolute turmoil. I had never heard my mother mention any of this. Later, I married Shenzi's father, a man I didn't love, but whom my family chose for me. And your mother married your father. We all thought our lives would just go on quietly like that, until the year the factory is restructured. Your father was framed, accused of embezzlement, and thrown behind bars. To clear your father's name, your mother ran herself ragged, but every door was slammed in her face. She came to beg me, begging my husband to help. But back then, our Shen family was also at a critical crossroads. And my husband, terrified of getting burned, refused her. She closes her eyes, a look of intense pain washing over her face. I will never forget the way she looked at me the day she left. There was no hatred, only utter disappointment. Not long after, news came that she had died in a car accident. Everyone said it was an accident, but only I knew her spirit was dead. She was driven to absolute despair. When your father heard the news in prison, his hair turned white overnight. Not even 2 years later, he also passed away from illness. It was me. It was our Shen family who slowly drove your parents to their deaths. He turns around to look at me. Lingxi, I'm not a good person. I made Shenzi marry you. At first, it was only to atone for my sins. I wanted to keep you close, so I could make it up to you. Let the grudges between our two families end here. I thought that by giving you the status of a daughter-in-law of the Shen family and providing you with a life of luxury, I was doing right by you. I was wrong. In my sheer arrogance, I trapped you in a loveless marriage. I forced you to suffer in silence for 5 long years. I owe you so much. A debt I can never repay in this lifetime. As she stood before me, this once high and mighty woman lowered her proud head to me for the very first time. I stared at her, then looked down at the cold, lifeless name carved on the tombstone. It turned out that the entanglement between me and the Shen family had already begun with the previous generation. This so-called marriage, this so-called atonement, made the last 5 years of my life look like one giant joke. I didn't cry, and I didn't make a scene. My heart was terrifyingly calm. I stepped forward and placed the bouquet of chrysanthemums in my hand before the tombstone. I knelt down and bowed 3 times to the tombstone. Then, I stood up, looked at Shid Chulin and said, "It's all in the past. From this day on, you owe me nothing. I don't hold any grudges against you either. We are even now. From now on, you are simply Anand's grandmother, and I am simply Anand's mother. Nothing more, nothing less." After returning from the cemetery, the first thing I did was pack up and move. I refused to accept any of the arrangements Shen Chulan offered. Instead, using the tiny bit of savings left in my bank account, I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood, not far from the family compound. The apartment wasn't big, but it felt warm and cozy. I spent 2 days cleaning every single corner until it was spotless, and bought a few pieces of new furniture and some green plants. The moment Anna and I walked in with our luggage, I felt like I was finally, truly alive again. "Mommy, are we going to live here from now on?" "Yes, this is our very own home." Without the glamorous shadow of the Shen family, and without the suffocating weight of the past. There was only me and him. Though our life was simple and modest, every single day was filled with sunshine. I found a job as a clerk at a nearby shopping mall. The pay wasn't high, but it was enough to cover our daily expenses. Every morning, I would walk Anna to preschool. Then I'd go to work. In the afternoon, I'd pick him up from school, and we'd head to the market together to buy groceries, then go home to cook. At night, I'd play games with him and read him bedtime stories until he fell fast asleep. Life was simple, but so full. Shen Tulen came to see Anna once a week. She was no longer that cold, high and mighty chairwoman Shen. She was just an ordinary grandmother. She would bring Anam plenty of toys and delicious treats, take him to play in the park, and clumsily read stories to him. Between her and me,
There was a polite but distant boundary. We had a silent understanding, never to mention the past.
Or Shenzhe. Soon, the verdict on Shenzi's case came in. Since he had turned himself in, Shen Chulin immediately paid back everything he owed. He was ultimately sentenced to 3 years. I didn't go on the day of his sentencing.
Shen Chulin went alone.
When she got back, she called me. She only said one thing. The dust has finally settled. Her voice was heavy with an endless exhaustion. Every now and then, I'd think of Shenzhe. I'd remember him crying in the interrogation room. I didn't know what he would be like when he got out. 3 years later, I didn't even know how I would face him then.
But I knew one thing. I didn't hate him anymore.
Time is the ultimate healer. It slowly mended the wounds in my heart and taught me how to forgive and let go.
In the blink of an eye, 1 year passed, and my life was completely back on track.
I performed well at work and was promoted to department manager. My salary went up quite a bit too, and then started first grade and grew into a smart, thoughtful little man. He would help me with chores and wrap me in a big hug whenever I got home from work.
He'd look up at me and say in his sweet baby voice, "Mommy, you worked so hard." He was the warmest light in my life.
One afternoon, while I was working overtime at the office, I received a call from an unknown number. On the other end of the line was a voice I had almost forgotten. Zhou Ru. Lindsay. Her voice sounded much more mature than it did 1 year ago.
"Vicky, is something wrong?"
My tone was completely calm. "I'm getting married next week," she said. It caught me off guard. "Congratulations." "Thanks." She paused for a moment, seeming a bit hesitant. "I called you because I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was so childish and selfish back then. And I also want to thank you. Thank you for not choosing the most extreme way to handle things back then. My husband now is just a regular college professor. We met at an art exhibition. He treats me really well. We're planning to settle down in Vancouver and never come back. I finally found my happiness, and I hope you find yours too." She hung up. I stared at the sunset outside the window. Suched this for a long time. Yeah, even Zhou Ru has found her happiness. What about me? Where is my happiness? I didn't have an answer to that. Or maybe I had never even bothered to look for one, just living a peaceful life with Anan. Watching him grow up healthy and happy, that was already the greatest happiness. As for love and marriage, that felt like something from a past life, distant and blurry. I thought my life would always stay this peaceful. Until a certain man appeared. His name was Gu Chen, the new neighbor, who just moved in across the hall. He was the owner of an architectural design firm, in his early 30s, handsome and very gentle. The first time we met was in the building's elevator. That day, I was carrying 2 heavy bags of groceries, with Shedan following close behind me. The elevator doors were just about to close, but he reached in from the outside to hold it. "Thank you," I said, giving him a grateful smile. "You're welcome," he replied, smiling back, and revealing a row of neat, white teeth. "Are you new here? Looks like we neighbors now. I'm Gu 10, and I'm Lindsay." That simple exchange was how we first got to know each other. After that, we started running into each other more and more. He'd help me fix my computer, carry heavy groceries for me, and whenever I worked late, he'd always leave a light on for me in the hallway. He was incredibly good to me, but his kindness always came with a perfect sense of boundaries. It never felt intrusive or overstepping. He was wonderful with Anan too. He'd play chess with him, teach him how to draw, and share all kinds of quirky, fascinating facts with him, just like a big kid, and absolutely adored him. Always running around calling him Uncle Gu, nonstop. I could tell Guchin had feelings for me. There was always this warm, gentle smile in his eyes whenever he looked at me. He'd ask me out to dinner, or invite me in Enan or weekend outings. I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes either. There was a barrier in my heart that I just couldn't get past. I'm a divorced woman with a child. My past is complicated and heavy, while he is young, successful, and has a brilliant future ahead of him. We just don't belong in the same world. Then, one evening, I didn't get home from work until very late. When I opened the door, I was shocked to find Gu Chen inside my apartment. He was sitting on the rug with Anan, completely absorbed in putting together a massive model aircraft carrier. Seeing me walk in, Anan run over to me, bubbling with excitement. "Mommy, look at the aircraft carrier Uncle Gu bought me."
Think Chen stood up as well.
Giving me a slightly sheepish smile. I saw Anan was home alone, so I thought I'd keep him company for a bit. I hope I'm not intruding? Not at all. Thank you. I set my bag down as a wave of warmth washed over my heart. "Have you eaten yet?" "I made some dinner. Let's eat together," he said. I looked down at the 3 dishes and a soup on the table. They were all of my favorite home-cooked meals. Suddenly, a soft spot touched deep inside my heart. We ate that dinner in complete silence. Once Inlam was full, he went back to his room to play with his new toy aircraft carrier, leaving only Gu Chen and me in the living room. "Things," he suddenly spoke up, looking at me with intense sincerity. "I know about your past." I froze. "I didn't mean to pry into your private life," he explained. A friend of mine works at the Shen Group, but I don't care about your past. I only know that you are a kind, strong, and wonderful woman. You deserve to be loved. And you deserve to be happy. He stood up and walked over to me, his gaze burning with intense sincerity. Lin Shi, will you give me a chance? Let me take care of you. And take care of Anan. Let me be your future. I looked up at him, seeing my own small, bewildered reflection in his eyes. My heart went into complete chaos. I admit, my heart skipped a beat, but my sanity was desperately pulling me back. Chun, I lowered my head, not daring to look him in the eye. I'm sorry, You don't have to answer me right now, he interrupted. Take your time to think about it. I just wanted you to know how I feel. With that, he didn't linger any longer. He helped me clear the table and wash the dishes. Then he left. I sat alone in the empty living room, unable to sleep a wink all night. Can I really find happiness again? Do I even deserve it? Gunchen's confession was like a pebble tossed into the still waters of my heart, sending ripple after ripple across the surface. I started losing sleep and losing my focus at work. His words from that night kept playing on a loop in my head. You deserve to be loved, and you deserve to be happy. Those words hovered in my ears like a constant spell. I didn't dare to believe it, and I didn't dare to accept it. The wounds Shenzhe inflicted on me ran too deep. That marriage, which existed in name only, had completely drained me of all my courage and hope for love. I was terrified. Terrified that opening my heart again would only lead to another betrayal and more pain. I was afraid that my past would become a burden on Gu Chen's future, and so I subconsciously started avoiding him. Leaving the house in the morning, I started checking through the people first, just to see if he was outside. And on my way home from work, I'd rather take the long way. I just didn't want to bump into him in the elevator. Thing Chan seemed to sense my coldness too. He stopped coming by and stopped asking me out. But every single morning, he would still leave a carton of warm milk right at my doorstep. And on rainy days, he would still text me to remind me to bring an umbrella. In his own quiet, gentle way, he kept watching over me, without putting any pressure on me at all. But his thoughtfulness only made me feel more guilty and even more conflicted. That weekend, Shen Chulan came over to visit Anan. We went down to the neighborhood park to watch him play. As we watched Anan happily running around and playing with the other kids, Shen Tulin suddenly spoke up. That young man next door, the one named Gu, he seems like a really good person. I was caught off guard by her bringing him up. How did you know about him? I've run into him a few times when I visited. Shen Chulan looked at me, the usual sharpness in her eyes completely gone, replaced by the warmth of a caring elder. He really cares about you. And Anne, I lowered my head, remaining silent. Lingxi. Shen Tulan sighed. I know what you're afraid of. That bastard Shenzhou hurt you deeply, but you can't let one rotten tree block your entire path and never dare to take another step forward. You're still young. Your life is just beginning. Anan needs a complete family, and you need someone who can stand by your side and protect you. The past is in the past. You can't keep carrying that heavy burden around forever. Give yourself a chance, and give someone else a chance too. Shen Tulin's words felt like a key, slowly unlocking the heavy chains around my heart. She was right. Why shouldn't I give myself a chance? Why should I write off every man in the world just because of one scumbag like Shen Ze? Thingchen is innocent. He shouldn't have to pay the price for the pain of my past. That night, for the first time, I finally gathered the courage to knock on his door. He was the one who answered. When he saw me, his face lit up with absolute shock and joy. Lingxi! I gathered every bit of my courage, looked straight into his eyes and asked, Does what you said before still stand?
He controls.
Then, an overwhelming wave of joy washed over his face. He took a sudden step forward and pulled me tightly into his arms. His embrace was so warm and firm, wrapping me in a scent that made me feel completely safe. My promise stands. It will always stand. He whispered those firm words right into my ear. At that very moment, the heavy wall I'd built around my heart for years finally crumbled. I leaned into his chest, closed my eyes, and let my tears silently fall. But this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of pure relief. Finally, my life was turning a brand new page. Thingchen and I officially got together. There was no grand, dramatic proposal. Everything just felt so natural. He moved into my cozy 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't a big place, but his presence made it feel incredibly warm and like a real home. He took over all the household chores, always coming up with new, delicious meals to cook for me and Em. He even tracked my period, preparing warm brown sugar tea and heating pads beforehand. He'd sit with me through those endless Korean dramas, clumsily wiping away my tears whenever I bawled my eyes out. He truly spoiled me like a child. And I quickly warmed up to him too, to my little boy. Think Can was the perfect mix of an all-powerful best friend and a loving father. He taught Ann how to swim, showed him how to ride a bicycle, and spent hours helping him assemble complex toy robots.
In Anan's world, Feng Chen filled that long, empty void left by the word father. One sunny weekend morning, the light was streaming in beautifully. The three of us were just lazing around in bed, and Gu Chen wrapped both Anan and me in his warm embrace. Suddenly, Anan looked up at him, and with a very serious face, asked, "Uncle Gu, can I call you Daddy from now on?" Feng Chen's entire body went stiff. I watched as his eyes instantly welled up with tears. He leaned down. I planted a deep, tender kiss on Anan's forehead. "Of course you can," he choked out, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've been waiting to hear you say that for so long." Tears welled up in my eyes, too. The three of us held each other as tightly as we could. Fail led the manual lock to the hallway. From that very moment, we finally became a whole, complete family, and our life became beautifully peaceful and filled with love. Every now and then, Shen Zhe still crosses my mind. I heard from Shen Chu that he's been behaving very well in prison. He even got his sentence reduced twice. In another 6 months, he'll be a free man. As for his return, my heart is completely at peace. The love and hate between us vanished long ago. Now, all that's left is a sense of family. After all, he is Anan's biological father, and that's a fact that will never change. I talked to Gu Zhen about this. Feng Chen just held my hand and said softly, "I respect whatever decision you make. No matter what you choose to do, I will always support you and stand by your side." His understanding and warmth gave me an overwhelming sense of peace, grating me on the pression. 6 months later, Shen's Duro was released. Feng Chen and I went to pick him up together. More than 2 years behind bars had completely changed him. He had lost a lot of weight. His skin had darkened, and the arrogance and restlessness in his eyes were entirely gone. Instead, there was only a quiet calm, shaped by hardship. He looked at me, then at Gu Chen standing next to me, and down at our tightly clasped hands. His eye dimmed for a split second, but he quickly regained his composure. "Thanks for coming to pick me up," he said, offering a small smile. Well, there's a bitter, quiet smile. On the way back, Chetan drove, while Cinzi and I sat in the back. I was Anan. He asked hesitantly. "He's doing great," I replied. "He's in 2nd grade now. He does well in school, and is very mature for his age." "Does he know about me?" I shook my head. I still don't know how to tell him. Shenzi fell silent. Ling Shi. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I know I have no right to say anything right now. I just want to tell you, I've never wanted you to be happy more than I do right now. That man, Gu, he seems like a good guy. Does he treat you well?" "Yes, he treats me very well." "That's good then." He leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes. It would mean finally fulfilling a deeply held wish. "That is good." After Shenzi was released from prison, he did not return to the Shen family. Shen Julen arranged a job for him at a branch office, starting from the very bottom, to let him start over from scratch. He had lost his old arrogance, becoming quiet and reserved. Yet he worked incredibly hard. He would come to visit Enna once a week. Every time he came, he would bring Etnam's favorite Transformers toy. He no longer tried to play the role of a father, but behaved like an uncle, reunited after a long separation, clumsily and cautiously trying to mend the bond that had been broken long ago. At first, Anan was very distant and shut him out, but Gu Chen always stepped in to help bridge the gap. He would tell Anan, "He is your father too, and he loves you very, very much. He just made some mistakes in the past, and now he wants to make things right." With Gu Chen's guidance, Anand slowly began to accept Shenzhe. He would share funny stories from school with him and show him the drawings he made. Every time Shenzhe was about to leave, Anan would run to the door and say, "Goodbye, Daddy." And every time that happened, I would see Shenzi's eyes well up with tears. St. Tran and my wedding was set for a sunny autumn afternoon. We held a small lawn wedding, without inviting too many guests, just our closest family and friends.
现出蓝天处，
She wore a festive red kippah, took my hands in hers, and slipped a vibrant green jade bracelet onto my wrist. She said, "This is a Shen family heirloom passed down to our daughters-in-law. Although you and Shenda are no longer together, in my heart, you will always be my beloved daughter-in-law. Lindsay, I wish you nothing but happiness for our wedding." I wrote the vows myself, standing in front of Gochin. Looking into his gentle eyes, I recited the words that had long been etched into my heart. I once thought my world was nothing but ruins, until you came along and made flowers bloom from the ashes. You healed me. You warmed my heart and made me believe in love again. Ping Chen, thank you. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being my light. From this moment on, through thick and thin, I promised to hold your hand and never let go. Tears welled up in Crinch's eyes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, leaned down, and kissed me deeply. We held each other tight under the warm sunlight. Not far away, I saw Shenzi standing in the crowd. He was wearing a sharp, tailored suit, watching us from a distance. A gentle smile played on his lips, but there were tears glistening in his eyes. He didn't come any closer. Instead, after the wedding ended, he had someone deliver a gift to me.
It was a painting.
It depicted a deep blue sea, a golden beach,
And a man, a woman,
and a child holding hands. As they ran along the shore,
joyful, happy smiles radiated from their faces. On the back, there was a handwritten note. Linshi,
I wish you eternal happiness. Shenze.
I hung the painting in the most prominent spot in our living room.
That night, as Guchen and I lay in bed, he wrapped his arms around me from behind. Resting his chin on the top of my head, he murmured,
What are you thinking about?
"Just thinking about how wonderful our life is now."
Yeah, it really is.
He tightened his embrace, holding me, along with the entire future of our family, tight against his chest. Outside, the moonlight pooled like water, casting a gentle, soft glow over us.
I know my life has weathered violent storms.
And dragged through the darkest, muddiest roads. But in the end, I finally found my own clear blue sky.
With a loving husband, a beautiful child,
And a warm, peaceful home. This is all the happiness I could ever ask for.